Originally, this was going to be a more formal video, and it just wasn't quite feeling right, so we're just going to do it this way, I guess. Yeah, so for those who don't know, this is my Windows 7 gaming machine. Of course, other than the case, it doesn't really look anything like it did before. I built this, 2 years ago now, in November, so this is its 2-year anniversary. And we're celebrating it by gutting it and completely rebuilding it for literally no other reason other than aesthetics. So yeah, the only thing I was going to do originally was upgrade these GPUs. And then it very quickly snowballed by freak chance of running across a new motherboard that I ended up changing the entire direction. It's still basically the same machine, but a different motherboard and stuff. So let's focus on what the GPU upgrade is first, and then we'll get into the whole motherboard stuff. So real quick rundown of the specs, since the core specs haven't really changed much. We have a Phenom 2 X4 965 Black Edition, which is of course overclocked to 4 GHz. Probably could push it a little farther if I wanted to, but I'm happy with it at 4 GHz. It's basically as good as a bulldozer for this era of gaming, which is amusing. We got 8 GB of RAM, not the same RAM, but it's same specs. See, an AM3 motherboard. We have a 120 gig SATA SSD, which would have been very primo for early 2010. And we got a 600 GB WD Raptor 10K RPM hard drive. Ooh, yes. And then we got this Cooler Master 850 watt gold fully modular power supply, which I don't know if this is actually faulty or not. It works. It powers the system fine, but I don't know if it's a build quality issue with the case or if it's a actual issue with the power supply. Basically, if I touch the front panel, this mesh part, with any sort of static electricity buildup, and sometimes it does it if it's really strong and I touch like any part of the case here, if it's strong enough to get through the paint, the computer will either turn off or it'll just reboot. That's not good. There's a grounding problem, and I don't know what it is because it still does it even with a new motherboard. So I don't know if it's the power supply or the case. I haven't tried testing it and ruling it out. I'm basically just like, I just ground myself before I touch the computer when it's on at this point, because I don't want to rewire all this. Oh man, this sucks. The wiring already looks bad enough. I don't want to do it. But the original GPU, that's right, single GPU, because it wasn't Crossfire originally, was these. This is a Radeon HD 5850. This has 1 GB of VRAM, and it was the one tier below the 5870, which was basically the first DirectX 11 GPU. Actually, I think these came out the same day, so the first DirectX 11 GPUs, and these were very good cards. The GTX 400 series was delayed and was power hungry and hot running. They were faster than these, but these were kind of a better value and just way more efficient. Overall, in my opinion, the better buy cards. And so we put one of these in the system when we first built it. And then a few months later, I did a video where we added a second card for Crossfire. The problem with that was the second card I had bought actually before I even built the computer. And I wanted to do this separate Crossfire video because that first video was very packed with stuff, and I didn't want to add another factor to this. Problem is the second card, which is actually this one. This has some like artifacting issues that I don't totally know what the problem is with it. Some commenters have suggested that it's probably a BGA RAM issue. It kind of goes away once the card heats up, so I think it's like a very small crack or something on probably a solder point or two. This card probably could be fixed just fine by doing a reflow, but I don't feel like it. These cards are kind of really not worth anything right now, so I will deal with that at some other point. But I also wanted to upgrade it, one, for some better performance, especially for running some of the later games. This does okay. It's a perfectly serviceable Windows 7 card, especially for 2011 games and older. These also only have 1 gig of VRAM, which again, for the later games, having more than a gig would certainly be nice, especially since I want to run everything at 1080p I can. So I started looking for an upgrade path. I figured, well, I'll go ahead and I'll buy the next generation flagship. You know, the 5850s are Terrascale 2, but I thought, oh, the 6000 series, that's Terrascale 3, and I don't hear Terrascale 3 get talked about that much. So I went ahead and bought the HD 6870. Those who know the mistake I made. So AMD decided to change their naming scheme for whatever reason. So the 800 tier card was not the flagship anymore, and they kind of shifted around the numbers as well. The 9 was now the flagship, so 6970 was actually their flagship single GPU. There was the 6990. Because in the 5000 series, the 5970 was a dual GPU card. So I even me, who loves to memorize and learn this stuff, didn't know about this. This isn't even a direct replacement for the 5870. This is Terrascale 2, because only the 6900 cards are Terrascale 3. This was a very weird refresh generation, although I believe all 6000 cards did benefit from some of the new features, like better tessellation performance. This was a very odd generation. NVIDIA did kind of the same thing too with the GTX 500 series. That was like Fermi 2.0 and just kind of was fixing a lot of the original issues that the 400 series had. Very odd that they both did refreshes the same generation, but this is actually more of in terms of pure specs and core layout, this is actually more of a direct replacement for the 5830 of all things. Probably at a better performance and whatnot, it's probably about on par with the 5850, maybe a touch faster. Still only has 1 gig of VRAM, and that's very odd considering this is a way heavier card than the 5850. They added this, this is the same Asus direct CU2 cooler. They added a backplate. This is a huge backplate for the time. I don't even think backplates today they're quite like this, honestly. And they added a bigger heatsink as well. The 5850 is only dual pipe. This is a I believe 3 heat pipe. Yeah, 3 heat pipe cooler versus 2. And I'm pretty sure this is on a refined node. So I don't get why they added a bigger heatsink. I guess that would be nice if you wanted to overclock this, but thankfully I didn't pay very much for the 6870. But I now had to go back on the hunt for actually the proper card that I wanted. So I started looking at 6970s. I found a 6970 power color one, I believe, and it was dead. So I got a refund for that, and I now have a stripped down PCB that I'll hang up on a wall probably at some point. So I figured, all right, fine. The 6950s, they're a little cheaper than the 6970s. I figured, well, the core's not cut down that much, so I'll pick up some 6950s. And again, those that are familiar with the 6900 series will know that BIOS flashing and unlocking 6950s to 6970s was actually very popular. These have basically the exact same core, just the BIOS disables some of the stream processors and some other stuff in each die compared to the 6970s. So in theory, you can just flash the BIOS and unlock it to a 6970, assuming the die was fully functional. I mean, there was kind of a reason that they disabled some of them. So it was kind of a gamble whether or not you got a card that could unlock or could not. I did not do that because these cards actually don't have the dual BIOS. It's kind of weird. That was a big selling point of the 6950, 6970, was the reference models had a dual BIOS switch from AMD. They had dual BIOS. And a lot of the partner cards just didn't, which is really frustrating because I would have loved to have messed around with that, but I really don't want to risk it. I mean, it's not going to brick the card permanently. I would just have to get a hardware flasher if it totally borked it. But yeah, I really didn't feel like messing around with that for a 5-ish to 5, maybe 10% performance increase. I didn't really feel like it. So you might be wondering what the heck these blue cards are. Well, they are 6950s from HIS. These are IceQX coolers, because that That was, I guess, their kind of flagship brand of cooler. And they got this kind of pretty cool, like, translucent, you know, light blue color. It almost kind of looks like a glacier almost, which is fitting, giving, you know, the ice name. And I think these are pretty nice looking. You know, they got a blue PCB. The whole thing is blue themed. And I think they're pretty good looking cards. You know, you would never see a card built like this today. PC parts are just, it's just illegal to have any sort of interesting color components anymore. They're all white, black, and if you're lucky, you might get some, like, silver or gold accents. That's all you get. Can we please bring back color that isn't just RGB? I am so tired of this. And I was kind of shocked when I saw these, because I didn't know HIS survived that late. I thought they just kind of fizzled out around, like, you know, mid-late 2000s, kind of, you know, like HD 4000 series, I thought is kind of where they just kind of disappeared. They did disappear, but they actually survived way longer than I thought. If you thought this was late, they actually made RDNA cards. RDNA 1, you know, Radeon RX, like, 5700 cards. And Vega cards. Way later than I thought. Like, I never heard anybody talk about HIS that late. And HIS, as far as I know, doesn't exist anymore. I think? So their website is actually still up. It's still hosted. In sort of like this weird zombie state. You can definitely tell that this website had not had any major design changes since, like, 2011. But the cards that are on there were updated, you know, with, like, Vega, and, you know, they do list, like, their RDNA cards and whatnot. But as far as I know, obviously they haven't made anything newer than RDNA 1, which was, like, 6 years ago at this point. The weird thing is, there's no press release that said, like, hey, we're going out of business. It was nice knowing you. Nothing that I found on their social medias. No news articles from any tech outlets that state, like, hey, HIS is going out of business, farewell, good times, all that stuff. No, they just gone. They just blipped. They blipped out of the universe. And somehow their website is still up. And all, like, their global website, their US website, all of them are like this. It's not like just the US site, they just stopped doing business in the US and didn't tell anybody. No, they're just gone. Like, everybody just up and left the office one day, and they said adios. I did reach out to their marketing email that they had on their website. I haven't heard anything back yet. That was like 4 days ago, so I don't expect a response. So as far as I can tell, they just went out of business, and they just up and left. And I have no idea why the website is still hosted. Maybe they had some sort of long-term, like, hosting contract that they, you know, paid up front for, and it's just going to be online for, like, the next, like, 10 years or something. But it's interesting. Quite the mystery. So with these being, you know, Terrascale 3 cards, should get some better performance than, you know, Terrascale 2 on top of the other improvements that the 6000 series brought. These also have 2 gigabytes of VRAM each, so that's very nice. That's pretty much what I wanted. Don't need some crazy high VRAM amount for this era, but 2 gigabytes is pretty good. That covers pretty much all your bases. And of course, this was still the era of the Crossfire Bridge. I believe this lasted until the 7000 series, actually. But yeah, obviously, these are very strikingly blue cards, and I bought them mainly because I got them for a good deal. Now, with having such striking blue cards, that would make for a very interesting contrast with our red and white Biostar board. I guess I could have had the red, white, and blue patriotic build, I guess. This is an 890 FX motherboard. This was the flagship chipset of this era. But, literally, like, the week I started, like, to mess around with this and start getting this stuff ready, I go to a thrift store I've never been to before. I always wanted to. It was just very far out of the way, and I never had a reason to ever really be out there. But I ran across this. In there is an Asus M4A89 GTD Pro / USB 3. Quite the model number. And as you can tell, it's blue and white themed, which is also a pretty popular color combo. Asus did it, and Gigabyte also liked doing that. I love that, honestly. The blue and white is probably my favorite looking motherboards from this time period. And hey, look, that matches perfectly with our blue GPUs. Just pure chance that this happened. This board is an upgrade and a downgrade, depending on how you look at it. So it's an upgrade, one, I think, in terms of aesthetics, because the build, like, completely matches now. You know, blue and white. I had white LED fans, white case. It matches very well together. It's kind of like a glacier, almost. That kind of nice blue and white, which, I mean, that's the theme they were going for on the GPUs, so, I mean, hey, that's very fitting. It's also an upgrade in the fact that it actually has USB 3. That BioStar board, no USB 3 on it, just USB 2 and, like, eSATA. Ooh. This adds USB 3, 2 ports in the back, and sadly, that's it. There's no front panel header, unfortunately. Really, really disappointing. I guess cases really weren't that common yet with, you know, the front panel headers. So I guess maybe that's why it didn't have it, but kind of disappointing. But at least we do have some form of USB 3 now. And I did actually add a PCI 1X little card in there in the middle that you can see. So that adds 2 ports in the back, and it adds the front panel header. So finally, my lone USB 3 port on the top I can actually use. Because before I only had the single USB 2, and that was kind of annoying. So we finally have USB 3, got that checked off the list. Been wanting that for a while. But it is technically a downgrade, because this uses the 890 GX chipset, not the FX. The FX was the flagship, the GX was one tier below the FX. Now, the GX actually adds onboard video, and this motherboard actually has pretty good video out options. It has VGA, DVI, and HDMI. This was pre-AMD's like APU era, so the graphics are built into the chipset itself, and they're really not great. Just a basic display adapter with some media acceleration. Completely worthless for this build. But the downside to the GX chipset compared to the FX chipset is that for Crossfire, the FX actually has full 16x bandwidth, full 16 lanes for both graphics cards if you're doing dual Crossfire. If you're doing like quad Crossfire, you get 8 lanes for each. The GX chipset, each card is only getting 8 lanes. And I think if you can do quad Crossfire, I don't know if you actually can, but I think I remember hearing it's like 4 lanes per card. Yeah, so it is kind of a downgrade going from this to this. But GPUs really at the time did not need much more bandwidth than, especially PCI Express 2.0. And apparently I didn't even realize this originally when I built it. I had the first card here, and I had the second card in this slot to give the cards more room to breathe. Apparently when you do that, this slot gets wired up as only 4 lanes, apparently. It has connectors for 8, but I guess when you do the Crossfire setup, it just drops this to 4. So that was cool. I didn't know that. Apparently I was just gimping my performance even more. I mean, it still worked fine, so I guess it didn't matter that much. So I guess technically this is actually an upgrade. We're getting more bandwidth than I originally had before, and thankfully the slots are spaced out just enough that the top card is not getting completely suffocated. Now, of course, I did also have to change out the RAM. The original RAM I had in here was some red G-Skill Ripjaws, I believe. So I went ahead and found some blue Corsair, I think it's Dominator? I don't know, it's Corsair Vengeance. Blue Corsair Vengeance, it's the same specs, 1600 megahertz CL9, but it just matches the build now. I guess I should probably find like a blue SATA cable for the optical drive, or a black one. I probably have one somewhere I could find if I really wanted to mess with that, but I don't really. Oh yeah, another plus that this board has, it has more than one 6 gigabit SATA 3 port. For some reason, the BioStar board only had a single port for that. Don't get that, don't know why. But this one, I believe, actually has up to 4, so that's actually really good. I think I've done enough yapping. I mean, there's more to talk about with this board, like has a special like core unlocker feature for, like the 3-core chips and dual cores. That's a whole different topic. But I think we should finally just get to seeing what the performance upgrade actually is, and move on with this, so this video isn't like ridiculously long. Here we are. This is still the same Windows 7 Pro install. I'm running Catalyst 16.2, the beta drivers. They seem to work fine for me, other than, the actual Catalyst software is a little bit buggy, but it works fine. It's not like fully featured, which is kind of annoying. Like, to get to the crossfire settings, I have to, like, go here, go to additional settings, wait for the old style catalyst to load, and then I can enable it. And I thought I had it enabled. Well, let's fix that. I don't know if I'm going to be using crossfire all the time, realistically, on this system, because it's just not... I feel like it is micro-stuttering more than the 5850s were, and I wonder if that's, like, the cards are just faster and they're kind of maxing out that crossfire link interface more than the older cards, or if, like, the CPU is kind of holding it back. I don't doubt that the CPU is probably holding things back here. We go ahead and load up Heaven, and these are the same settings that I ran from the first Crossfire video, so we can compare these pretty accurately. Now, a weird thing about this motherboard, the second down PCI Express slot is actually the primary one. Like, it won't post with a card in the top slot. It just doesn't work. You have to put, if you have a single card, it has to be in the bottom slot. And if it's Crossfire, then you still have to use that second card as your, like, primary output. That confused me, like, a ton until I looked it up, and I was like, what? Why? I've never seen that before. So if you have this board and you're wondering why it seems to be broken, it's probably not. But another thing is, you see, this second card, GPU 2, is actually the one in the top slot. This one runs way hotter. It runs like 10 degrees hotter than the bottom card does. And I don't know why. I've repasted it like twice just to make sure I didn't mess it up the first time. My only guess is that it's recirculating more of its own air, and it's recirculating some of the air from the bottom card. I don't know. So right off the bat, I can already tell you this is definitely better than the 5850s in Crossfire. I forget if these cards are overclocked or not. The core is 840. I'll have to double check what the reference 6950 is. The machine is definitely a bit more on the loud side. Those fans aren't quite as quiet as the Asus cards, and I had to set a custom fan profile because that top card was getting way too hot, like high 80s, and it wasn't ramping the fans up correctly. I think because it was getting confused with the primary card running so much cooler, and it was like a driver thing was overriding whatever the BIOS had integrated. I don't know, some weird thing. I had to set a custom one because it was just running too hot. But that fixed it. It doesn't really get up much above, I think, mid or high 70s now. This is also a different monitor than what I had been using. When I first built the system, I was using a Dell 1680 by 1050 monitor. That monitor is fine. I like that monitor a lot. But of course, it's not full HD. I wanted full HD, and I wanted something a little bit bigger. And then I have my 1200p Dell monitor. I do love that a lot, except for the fact that it has like 24 dead pixels on it. It's bad. It's not that noticeable unless it's, you know, like a black screen or something, but it is very annoying. So this is some, I don't know, it's some like 2017 a 1080p Dell monitor. It's not the greatest, but it does have pretty low input latency, which is nice. And the CPU 4 gigahertz overclock transferred perfectly over to this board, so there wasn't any like retuning I had to do. I think I'm running it at a slightly higher voltage than I was on the BioStar board. To be honest, I haven't really fully like tweaked it, but it's running at like a perfectly safe voltage for the chip, so I'm not really worried about it. It's running pretty cool. It's not getting above like, I think, the high 50s. There you go, 42.4. I believe the 5850s were like low 30s, I think around like 32. So that's a pretty significant upgrade. And a single 5850, I think, got about 17.5 FPS, and a single 6950, I tested it, is about 22. So, you know, that's pretty good. It's a pretty good upgrade. It's not crazy. It's still within that, you know, 2010 era. It's a 2010 card, which is, this is the era I want to keep this machine in. But it works, works pretty good. That's a good bit of, performance uplift. We'll go ahead and run Tomb Raider. I'm not going to run through all the benchmarks because you didn't come to this video for a 6950 Crossfire performance analysis. That's not what you came for. I could do that at some point if you guys really want to. I would use a better system, honestly, than this. I'd probably put it on like a Sandy Bridge system or something. or just anything faster that's not going to hold it back. This should be 1080p Ultra this is running at, so, you know, this is a 2013 game. This was a pretty big 2013 game, and it's got, like, the AMD, like, hair, like, tress effects, I think it's called, which apparently works on these cards. I didn't know it did. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the hair does not normally look like this if you turn it off. Well, we can check it out, because I've never actually tried it, but I think the hair is a tress effects only thing. So yeah, a very good experience. You know, this is a 3-year newer game than the cards, and they're handling it fantastically at, you know, full HD ultra settings. You know, that's great. Yeah, hair quality, tress effects. If we turn that to normal, so I guess this is what it would be on an NVIDIA card, one of the rare times where a game would actually be better on AMD. Yeah, you can see how much worse how much lower quality the hair is. I mean, it doesn't look bad, it's just very, you know, rigid and stiff. I feel like tress effects didn't really gain that much ground, to be honest. Yeah, it seems to be mostly used by, like, Tomb Raider and Deus Ex Mankind Divided also used it. Is that really it? This is running at way higher frame rates, though, without it. I wonder if tress effects was more optimized for, like, the GCN cards, which that wouldn't surprise me at all. Oh yeah, way higher. So just turning off the hair instantly increased our FPS by, like, a ton. But our system's powerful enough that we can actually, you know, just leave it on. Which, hey, I gotta give AMD credit. The fact that they backported this setting to work on Terascale, pretty cool. Gotta give them credit. Pretty cool. Of course, I'm showing off all of the synthetic benchmarks that are good for showing off the crossfire scaling. We're gonna ignore how well it actually scales in, you know, games. It doesn't help that, you know, our CPU is not the fastest for gaming. It's not terrible, but, you know, it's not amazing. Yeah, see, like, this was getting, like, I think about 13 to 14 FPS in on the 5850s in Crossfire in that first, you know, shot. So definitely a big increase. And there we go. 3383. I think it was around like 26 before, something like that. We are a lot better than a 2013 Office PC with... Oh, okay, that explains it. 7970M. I was like, how are we getting stomped by an A10 right now? Like, that is wrong. What's the HTC Vive? A 970 and a 4590. Honestly, the fact that we're that close to that is surprising, to be honest. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to add here. This video has probably been long enough from me just rambling about stuff, but I just wanted to give an update. That way, if you ever see the 7 machine in future videos, you're not confused about what happened to it. And I also just wanted to talk about my blue system. It's blue, blue, white, blue.